Someone just started full-on farming over there. Hello, and a very warm welcome to my mini podcast series by and for the independent boss girl only. If you're looking for more independence and confidence in your personal life and career, I'm here to share my stories of 7 years in the music industry and what it's like as a female producer and songwriter, and how I got to where I am now. There's episodes coming every week where we talk about mental health, spirituality, love, fitness, the whole spectrum, and how balancing all those aspects, maybe a little bit differently, can help you directly make some pretty cool changes in this valuable lifetime. All right, let's have some fun. I got my water. Yeah. Okay, episode number 1. I'm actually here. I'm actually doing this. This is pretty crazy because I'm not used to this. First off, like just being in front of the camera again is, we'll see how it goes. But I actually wrote down in my journal a couple of weeks ago, if not months ago. I have such a bad perception of time that, no, I would assume it was months ago. And it said like, I made this kind of manifestation of I'm gonna put myself out there again this year and I'm gonna reach this and that many followers. So I don't know. I didn't even expect to be doing this, but it kind of just happened. We don't have a monitor, but I have a mirror right over there. And everything looks great in the mirror, but that's usually how it is. It looks great in the mirror, but not on camera. So you gotta make sure, you gotta double check. I don't know what to expect yet. And neither do you, of course. And it's probably really weird to a lot of you, like, what is this? Why don't you just like focus on the music? Like, Vic, where is the music? And I can assure you, I've been working on so much stuff for the past 3 years, and there's so many reasons as to why it's been taking so long, but there's stuff coming this year still. I'm pretty convinced, at least. I mean, I'm in this pretty intense phase right now of finishing stuff up, and I just got so isolated in like the basement studio, and I started thinking about why would I be making all this music if I don't even seek this kind of connection anymore. So I, realized I wanted to try something different this summer, just have a different creative outlet. So I'm renting this camera for a couple months, and yeah, I kind of just started out with this podcast idea. Like, I've always wanted to try it, and whatever you want to call it, sit down videos, story time, whatever you want to label it. It's just like, it's going to be a small series of a few episodes, and then I'll get back to the music. But there is definitely a specific reason as to why I wanted to do this kind of thing. So I'd been gone from the internet for a little while, and I felt like a little bit of explaining and just reconnecting was appropriate. And just to come clean about certain misconceptions from the past, that's actually really important to me, to kind of have this fresh start, and also potentially provide some, valuable life lessons, or I'll just try and make it at least a little bit interesting for some people that might be new here. There's still people on my dick about stuff that I shouldn't have to be thinking about anymore, so I'm just here to finally tell my side of the story. But that's coming later. First off, to explain why music's been taking so long. So I really wasn't happy with what I'd been making. That's probably the easiest way of putting it. I mean, even if I was happy, I kept on being told like, yo, your songs are kind of meh. Like why don't you work on structure a little bit? Or why don't you try writing acoustically? And so I did. I tried everything. I went back to LA for a month and a half and just got into every session I could and learned a tremendous amount of cool shit and got so many cool songs started. And a couple of those are actually coming soon, I guess. I mean, they're pretty much ready to go, so I'm hoping to figure out the the nitty-gritty about that. But turns out even my mom likes those songs that I've been making recently, so that means a lot, and that says a lot about the quality of the recent stuff, because my mom's like my harshest critic, I would say, even more so than myself. So yeah, I'm excited about that, and it's been a fun summer. It's been a fun year just being locked in a basement studio. But like I said, I needed to do something else, and that's why I'm here. I really just felt this urge to share my story before I get into releasing music on like a schedule or like full scale. And like talk about how I made all these connections, how I got to where I am, and most importantly, what sacrifices I'm making continuously to be able to, keep this up. Because, oh my God, I think it goes without saying that it's not easy to be like an independent artist. But what also really inspired this whole podcast series thing is I've recently made some friends younger than me. And for the first time, I kind of had my eyes open to the idea that maybe through all these sometimes really shitty things that I had to go through, maybe I could share that in someone younger than me, or doesn't matter what age, like maybe someone could either relate or just learn something or feel a bit better about themselves, or yeah, that's also like the third big pillar of why I'm doing this. So for this first episode, I want to talk about how we often forget to see the good after something tragic happens. And we sure all have our own examples of that. But I just wanted to share times in my life where I could clearly see in hindsight the blessing after the curse, and what that had to do with me being gone from the internet for so long. Because I had quit social media for at least half a year. And that kind of started when I got back from LA last fall, because I was shattered, like substantially heartbroken. That's a bit difficult to explain, and I hope it's okay that I do share that story. So if you see this, you know who you are. I'm really grateful for everything, and it's all love, and I'm really thankful for the time, and I hope you're doing good. And I hope it's okay I'm sharing this, because yeah, it's kind of just what I do with songwriting anyway. Hope that's it's fine. But last summer I got connected to someone I had known about for a couple of years and really looked up to, because he's kind of my age, but like super successful, Forbes list and shit. And we had a little thing going on for not very long, and it was to be expected, and I could have, I should have and could have seen just like being a little more closer to reality, and accepted that this wouldn't be able to continue when I go back across the globe. But I was still somehow extremely sad when we had to admit it wasn't working out. Probably because like old stuff resurfaced, and like abandonment issues and old traumas came back, and stuff that I just hadn't dealt with. And it was especially hard to lose him, because I felt like he was finally someone that really saw, or at least had a similar story to mine, in terms of what sacrifices I'm making for my career on a daily basis. And I really like fell for him when I found out that he also hadn't gone to prom and hadn't been to all these high school parties, but started his own business instead at a very young age and got to super high places pretty quickly. And that was just really inspiring. And it was really, really sweet of a time, but it all just kind of came crashing down when I had to go back home, because I don't have my American visa yet, long story short. And a lot of weird things happen all at once. Like my parents fell ill and I had to take care of them, and so much stuff just happened all at once that I completely fell back into a very bad depressive episode and just instantly went back to an extremely dark place. And it led me to, distance myself and isolate and deactivate social media just to remove myself from everything. And honestly, I just wanted to figuratively delete myself. All that said, like I hinted at earlier briefly, it finally gave me this kind of kick in the butt once I started coming to my senses again, that I need to deal with these past traumas that I hadn't dealt with, and that kept on really, really dragging me down before I knew it, very out of control kind of situations that I couldn't, let happen again and again. I needed to get a grip on that. So I think I really took care of a lot of that over the past couple months. And yeah, that's been very vital also to the songwriting. Another kind of blessing that came with this dark time was that in hindsight, I realized I'd written so much good stuff. I'd written so much good stuff during even the worst nights or days. That's kind of the takeaway of this first little increment of the blessing coming after the curse. No, I first want to talk about, though, the red string thing. The red string thing. One thing that kept on resurfacing that I'm so fascinated by and just cannot stress enough is how, for some reason, in my life, and even before I had anything to do with spirituality or Buddhism or angel numbers, before I knew any of these things, I would always still be able to see an extremely clear red line with everything happening in my life, whether it was just the most painful, tragic bullshit just thrown at me for no reason, even if it was just the worst stuff to go through. Whenever something ended, something new came around the corner, sometimes even right away, that made it all make sense and made it all right. And so I just can't stress enough how much you just sometimes need to go through hell to even realize your life hasn't even begun yet. There was always something that made it right and that made me see oh, this had to happen. In the most obvious but slightly crazy, surrealistic way. I wouldn't have known the person I just told you about without the person I'm about to tell you about. Because this entire concept had repeated itself before when I was way younger on a much larger scale, and it affected everything that I am today. It changed me forever. I'm not sure whether for the better or worse, but that's what I'm trying to say. It was the worst thing I'd gone through, but without being at that place at that time, nothing would be going on in my life right now. None of the amazing experience I've had. Okay, so I'll keep it as vague as possible. So should anyone from the past get in contact about taking this down, you've got absolutely no reason to. I have all the right to share my story the way that it happened. and I will no longer bear the weight of your mistake. Honestly, this is probably honestly the most integral thing and the most important part of my life that started everything that led to everything I do now. And I thought about sharing this for a long time, and it still scares me because of how things just were then. And random people still hit me up about it and like tell me their fabricated version of what happened. So I was just like, before I release any more music, I feel like I really want to come clean about this and tell my story from my own perspective, like, and not have anyone take it away from me this time. What's probably the key takeaway from this entire episode is just the fact that everything that's led up to my life being the way that it is now, and there were times, trust me, where I thought everything was over, even just a few months ago, like, it's over, I've lost everything, I've lost everyone. But I always came to realize in hindsight, hadn't I gone through the pain, none of this would happen today. So, and the 1-2 year period of my life where that was the most apparent was when I was 18 and I first just took matters into my own hands and figured I would really go full force. Like, high school had just ended and I was out of the whole bullying situation or like being isolated, not having friends. I finally thought my life would be able to start and I would be able to really stand on my own for the first time. I still remember the day where I told my mom, like, I don't care what you're gonna say, I'm flying to the city in North America that I'm not gonna address. But that was really where my life kind of started. So yeah, to make a little more sense of this, I got out of high school, started taking music very seriously, and just was making a bunch of stuff and uploading it online, and also starting to get in contact with some other independent artists. And there was this one specific artist who I still, sometimes go back to look up and check on, and I still respect his brand very much and enjoy his music very much all the same. But we had a whirlwind of a story. I started engaging with this independent artist who had quite a following at the time already, and yeah, started sending him some music, and to my surprise he got back and really liked it and saw some potential, and I was, extremely over the moon pretty much instantly, like, whoa. I'd never expected actually anyone to listen, let alone see some kind of potential in what I was making at the time even. But I know for a fact that none of what he said then was like a lie. Like, I know that he meant it, and it built me up so much at the time to even be able to continue. So thank you very much for that. Honestly, I still think about those things a lot. But the problem was kind of when we weren't just talking about music, but other things as well. Like, he started just coming on relatively strong and just giving me all these compliments I had never received before. I had never had any attention in school. I had never had any friends. I was always like the misfit. It was kind of a lot to handle, but I was over the moon about it because, I'd never had anyone say these things to me before that I was dying to hear. Like, you're pretty, you're this and that, like, come over and see me. Like, I'd never had anyone say that to me before, let alone someone with a big following who I really thought was incredibly talented. And, he's handsome and stuff. And And that just completely had me ignore the red flag, the obvious red flag that he was 10 years older than me. And even though I was 18 and like fully legal and all, it was still like, you don't do that. Like my sister is that age now, and if I try to even imagine her going through what I went through back then, it's just heartbreaking and unimaginable, actually. Kind of gross. But despite that, I still feel extremely badass about the fact that I actually still made things happen and got out on the bright side of everything. But yeah, despite having never left my parents' home and never been to any place outside of this tiny rural town in Central Europe that I'm from, I had never had any life experience or anything going on ever. So that was just absolutely insane, to be honest. I just took a chance, and I don't even think he meant it when he said come over, but I took it very seriously. So I was like, okay, I'm coming over. Because I was like, I need to take this chance. Like if there's one place and time in my career where I can make something happen and be in a place where music happens and where I could be discovered or be heard, I gotta take that chance. So I literally scrapped some money together and flew across the world to a foreign city for a week or something, and I met up with that person, and it was all fine, it was all nice. It was just that when, you know, things eventually got physical, and that's something I obviously regret, and that's like the part that I do regret. But it is what it is. I couldn't have known at the time that I was being groomed, that I was taken advantage of. I couldn't have known that because no one had ever told me, no one had ever warned me. I didn't know the first thing about men. I'd never been around any, so that's kind of why I let that happen. This would never happen nowadays, and I'm glad it happened then, because I know now not to do these things. He was technically being relatively nice about everything, and he didn't inherently do anything wrong, if we're not going to mention the 10-year gap. 2 years went on, and I could already like tell that something was off, and I was not happy at all. Like that was the worst time of my life. Like I'm trying to explain with all this. I was abusing alcohol to a pretty bad extent, because I just couldn't deal with any of these emotions. Honestly, it was way too much to deal with. Like, how come someone across the world with this big following suddenly like sees something in me and promises all these big things, but there's no follow through, and things kind of just seem very shady. So health-wise, I was putting my body through absolutely the worst things you could put your body through. And I'm, to this day, kind of struggling with that. But yeah, after those, the reason things ended after 2 years was because I kind of found out through social media as well that he had been cheating the entire time. I mean, obviously, like, how would someone just like be serious with someone 10 years younger? Like, of course I was the rebound side chick, but I couldn't have known, honestly. There was no way. But I had to see that and eventually accept it. But the day I found out, I still remember I was just like, I'd never been shaking that much before. I was completely torn apart, honestly. It felt like everything was over. Like, who's gonna take care of me now? Who's gonna love me now? Who's gonna say he loves me now? Who's gonna take care of my career? Who's gonna make sure I get to travel to North America again? Who's gonna make sure, who's gonna get the ball rolling? Like, am I gonna do that? Like I felt like everything was over again, and it was just back to me, to lonely, lonely me. And no one ever knew, and no one would ever even hear about this. And no one actually has heard about this ever. So I'm finally coming to terms with these emotions and kind of reassessing everything. Basically, that day I found out, I went to, not the day of, but I called a therapist for the first time because I didn't know what else to do. And thank God she took me in a couple days later, and I finally got to talk to someone about all of this crazy stuff. And I don't even think the therapist knew what to say, because like in this small town, I don't think any of this had ever happened. Of like, I don't know, is that being snobbish? Like bragging about how crazy of a thing that was? No, it's not. But yeah, I got diagnosed with a couple of things and was supposed to pick up some pills, but I never did, because that's like, it's my own thing to deal with. But the reason I had never told anyone is because like I didn't have any friends, I didn't have anyone to talk to. So that was really the first time I raised my voice about potentially having been very much taken advantage of, just in pursuit of taking my career to the next level. I had to kind of unintentionally lose my virginity and have all these traumas added on. Of course I did it to myself. And there's proof that people that intentionally put themselves through a lot and in situations that are either threatening or obviously harmful, it kind of says a lot about how far you can potentially go in life, I feel like. And the absolute kicker was when his fans started coming for me. Because without having any friends and stuff, I would obviously try and find another kind of outlet for just everything that was going on in my head so extremely loudly. So I turned to social media and had to keep it as vague as possible and just like not mention any names, not tag anyone. When I went to the city, I wasn't allowed to tag that I'm there, that like post about anything. I was a ghost for 2 years. And that's obviously like a huge red flag. When I started kind of reaching out online and like just trying to have anyone explain to me what was going on, just trying to understand how I could possibly cope with this, instead of like finding some understanding ears, what I got was just being raided by his fans with like a bunch of dislikes on my YouTube that I had to wipe eventually, and everyone just like coming at me like, who do you think you are? And there's no way you know him, there's no way you're sleeping with him, there's no way all of this going on. And then he would be sending me really harsh messages of like, you can't possibly be saying anything, like what is this? So I, on top of everything, always ended up as the bad guy. It was just brilliant. It was just brilliant. And all of this pain just like kept on growing, and I had no outlet. And even after 2 years, when I found out he was cheating, I still didn't want to like pull the plug. I was still trying to make things right. I was still clinging on, like, please love me, please make this right. Should I come over again? We should have a sit down, like, how can we make it right? All of that. It was just pretty bad. Would any of this happen today? No. None of this would happen today, and that's why I'm so glad I went through that. I wouldn't change a damn thing about any of it. And I'm still so fascinated, because what happened was, even during those 2 years, I wasn't even aware yet, but someone that would eventually turn everything around and make everything great happen that has happened to me in the past, 5 years that we've known each other now? I didn't know that that person was already in my life, kind of then. And that's absolutely insane, because without having been in that place at that time, without having been in that circle of the cheating guy, I would have never met my dear manager, who is now like family, and my big brother. And without him, I would have never had any of these insane, amazing experiences of the past 5 years or so. Like, he makes sure I have a place to stay when I'm in LA. He makes sure I get around. He makes sure everything's fine. Like, he checks on me. He would even pay for my food back when I was like a little kid, just in LA for the first time. He would just be like a big brother, and I still don't know how I deserve that, but I know that without those 2 years of hell, none of this would be going on now, and I would have not experienced all of these great things. If there was an easy way for me to say this, I just feel so incredibly loved and seen and respected and included for the first time, you know? It's mesmerizing how much has changed from who I was at 18 versus who I became after all of that was over, even though it was immensely painful. And to say I was heartbroken is an understatement, but like, I don't want to go any further into detail about like everything that was going on in here and that I'm still dealing with. It's, you know, it is what it is. But like I said, there's not a single thing in me that would want to change it. I have just a whole circle of incredible friends in LA now, and on the East Coast as well. To think that back when I was going through that, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it out. I wasn't sure if I was going to, you know, be alive much longer, but eventually things completely changed. So this honestly devastating, heartbreaking experience had opened all the doors I needed open. After I made it out, it was kind of not smooth sailing, but the closest to smooth sailing. And also the song I wrote during that time is like my most successful one so far. You know, it is what it is. Kind of, I guess, says a lot. And I just know now exactly what I want, what I don't want, who I am. And I can't stress enough how much things just completely turned around. It's been so amazing. So yeah, I just really felt like before sharing any music, I had to get this off my chest, because believe it or not, I still get DMs from fans of his, or just, I'm still being bugged about this, you know, and I never really chose to have this story attached to my career, especially when people go, oh yeah, of course, like, he's made sure you have all these connections now, like, that's his achievement. Definitely. Which is exactly why I wanted to just say this all out loud, and proud to a certain extent, obviously. Like, I survived this on my own, and without any coping mechanisms back then. I don't even know what I'm scared of nowadays. You tell me. Apparently I'm a threat to him because he keeps blocking me everywhere. But hey, it is what it is. All the best to you. And since we're talking about blessings and curses, this guy has also been a huge curse to my life, obviously. He's just terrible. In all seriousness though, he really like drove me crazy for the first couple weeks, because he took over my bathroom because he needed a space to just be himself, his stinky self, and just figure himself out, and just turn from a baby to a boy, at least. That's what happened so far. And yeah, it definitely drove me a bit crazy to not have my bathroom, and just made it a huge mess. Like, there was mud all over the floor. It was mental. But we figured it out. We got closer together, and need I say more? Just listen to that. I mean, wow. So soothing. And just being able to squish his face any time of day when I need some stress relief is just the biggest blessing. So yeah, that's basically it. I mean, I don't know if I'm too happy with this episode, but I said what I needed to say. I'm convinced of that. Yeah, and should anyone be upset, let me know. I'm not scared anymore. I'm just excited to have like a fresh start and finally have told things from my perspective. And I left out all the details, so there's like nothing to even complain about. And you can stop sending me your version of my life in my DMs now. Yeah, all in all, I'm so excited to obviously release new music soon and see what else I can do with this camera, because I'm making a lot of visuals for the new releases. So really stoked on that. It's gonna be a lot of hard work, and I'm tired. I don't know if you can tell. He's asleep, I'm half asleep. I think we're signing off for tonight. It's actually close to midnight, you can't tell because of this setup. He wants to go back to his bed. Thank you so much for listening to all this. I hope I get used to this a little more soon. So yeah, bye!